What does it mean to be wild, willing, and wise? And what does it have to do with the Maiden, Mother, and Crone archetypes? What is a warrior goddess? A Toltec teacher? What is the fire that awakens within us when we walk the spiritual path? And when should we paddle? When should we rest? And when should we jump naked into the river of life? These are the topics we will dive into today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back, or welcome for the first time to my channel. I'm Davina Katulski, self-help author, psychologist, life coach, and New Thought spiritual practitioner. This channel is dedicated to personal growth, spirituality, health, and well-being, and everything we talk about this channel is about supporting our mind, body, and spirit on the journey to healing and transformation. Today, my special guest is Toltec wisdom teacher and warrior goddess woman HeatherAsh Amara. HeatherAsh is the author of 9 books: Warrior Goddess Wisdom, Warrior Goddess Way, Warrior Goddess Training, The Warrior Heart Practice, Big Freedom, Awaken Your Inner Fire, The 7 Secrets of a Healthy Relationship with Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., and her newest book, Wild, Willing, and Wise, an interactive guide to when to paddle, when to rest, and when to jump naked into the river of life. I love that subtitle. HeatherAsh guides people to shift from self-judgment to discernment, victimhood to authentic vulnerability, and to shed limiting domestication so they can ground into their self-intimacy, steadiness, and stillness. Raised in Southeast Asia, HeatherAsh has traveled the world from childhood and is continually inspired by the diversity and beauty of human expression and experience. HeatherAsh plants her feet in New Mexico, but as a lifelong nomad, she spends much of her time traveling, teaching, and writing in cafes around the world. How awesome is that? Please welcome HeatherAsh Amara.
Thanks so much, Davina. So good to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here today with me. I really do appreciate it. And I have a bunch of your other books up on the bookshelf there, but I just wanted to showcase those too. And I wore red in honor of the covers of your books today as well. Um, so it's such a pleasure to be here with you. Our paths first crossed in the mid 1990s, and they've continued to cross in various ways over the last like almost 30 years, which is bananas that much time has passed. Our close friend, one of my close friends, Alice Lansfield, was in your group with Don Miguel Ruiz back in the 90s, and she invited me to a Firewalk you were leading in Davis, California, I believe. And the Firewalk quickly turned into a wind walk because it was too windy to do the Firewalk on that day. Yep, you had
It was that firewalk.
yeah,
It was
yeah, we had the wind walk, and you had the foresight to notice a dangerous situation and pivot, which I think is so important, because some people would just blast ahead, and you connected with the universe and you knew what the right thing to do was. And you did not disappoint. You brought out some beautiful, powerful healing rituals for the group, which were amazing. And it was then that I knew you were truly a master teacher. And over the last 30 years, I have learned so much from you in the different workshops that I've taken with you and reading your books. And I just feel, very lucky that our paths have continued to cross, and so blessed that you share this information and these teachings with so many people around the world. So I just want to, thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Davina. That was one of the best firewalks ever.
You remember it.
I do very well. It was
Yeah.
the first time I had to cancel a firewalk, and I was like, how are we going to do this? And I just remember it was breathtaking. It was
Yeah.
really, yeah.
It was such a powerful experience. And though I got to firewalk later with Tony Robbins people, I didn't get a chance to firewalk with you. That wind walk was such a gift. And I learned there were so many powerful rituals and experiential things that you had us do that it did not disappoint at all. It was a really rich, rich evening. Yeah. And again, it speaks to your spiritual depth. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey and then like when you started doing firewalking?
Mm, I had a really deep spiritual experience when I was 7 years old, and I was incredibly blessed because I grew up in Southeast Asia and traveled with my parent. My parents took my sister and I around the world every year, so we visit different
Amazing.
places every summer. And we were in India, and I was holding my dad's hand, and I remember where my head was is I was worried my shoes were going to get dirty because the streets were so dirty. And I looked up And there was this 7-year-old, about a 7-year-old girl, Indian girl, walking towards me. And she was in rags, she was barefoot, she had really straggly hair. And our eyes met, and we both like fell in love, is the best explanation of what happened. Everything else fell away. My heart opened. I was like finding this kindred being. And then we passed. And of course, I never saw her again. But I knew in that moment that my thought that I was a separate being, that there were differentiations between humans, like all of that went away. And I recognized we're all connected. And
Wow.
there's this incredible web. So that was the start. And then I forgot about it.
So
And
you had a oneness experience at 7, like things that people meditate for months and years, and you had it at age 7. How beautiful.
it was really exquisite. And pretty soon after I had it, I forgot it and got immersed in, trying to become what I thought I was supposed to be for years. And it really wasn't till I moved to the States and started looking at different spiritual traditions again that I recaptured that,
Mm.
and really dedicated my life to helping us find connection again, for me to feel that sense of connection. And that's where the Firewalk came in. I was studying with a teacher, and she said, Vicki Noble in the Bay Area,
Oh yeah,
such a
Vicky
great
Noble.
teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one day she comes into class and she's like, so my friend Peggy's doing this Firewalk, and you all should probably go. I really, really, really recommend it. And I remember thinking, wonder what a Firewalk is. All right, I'll go. And
That was great. You're just open.
I
Yeah.
I had no idea. And I remember being around the fire and starting to rake it out, because she's had everybody rake it out a little bit, and thinking, there is no way I am doing this. This is hot. Like, what is happening here? And yet, when the coals were raked out, when we did the prayer, when the chanting began, something happened. And I knew at a certain point that I could walk. And that first time through, and I'm sure you remember this because it's like this for everybody, there's this amazement
Yeah.
that
Mind blowing.
happens. So beautiful. So I got really quiet, completely still, total faith. And a month later, I got an invitation to do a Firewalk instructor training,
Oh wow.
and realized, okay, this is my path. Let's
And
do
you said
this.
yes. Again, you said yes to it.
I said yes. I was
Uh-huh.
24.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, what a unique opportunity.
And I got to study with Peggy directly, who's the mama of the Western Firewalking movement, and be in long relationship with her. We still teach together sometimes, which is such a great honor. She's about to retire. So it's really remarkable to have been so lovingly mentored by so many incredible teachers, Vicky, Peggy, Don Miguel.
Mhm.
uh, Incredibly blessed.
What would you say? I mean, that is really, really a rich experience. What would you say would be the reason why someone should or shouldn't walk on fire or do a fire walk? And what do you believe the gifts of fire walking are?
There's two types of firewalking, and a lot of us are doing a mixture of them. But there's the Tony Robbins, which most people know about, which
Mhm.
is a very motivational. You walk once usually. There's a lot of energy, and it's
Yeah.
about overcoming fear. So that's one type, and I think of those as, I call those line firewalks. That
Mm-hmm.
there's this linear motivation, get your energy up, go,
Uh-huh.
incredibly powerful, and you leave feeling like, all right, what, I can change things, I can
Yeah.
change my life. And then there's what we call circular firewalks, or what I call circular firewalks, that are more spiritual in nature, that usually there's a community standing around the fire in a circle chanting. Sometimes the coals themselves are actually built into a circle. We just did that a couple of weeks ago at a training. And they're for spiritual development.
Mhm.
There's a kind of softer open-heartedness, and you walk whenever you feel like walking, or you don't walk, or you walk multiple times, or you dance across the coal with friends.
Uh-huh.
And so that's what I learned. I study with both Tolly, who is definitely the motivational
Hmm.
line, and with Peggy,
Yeah.
who is the more circle spiritual. And for people, they're both incredibly potent.
Hmm.
And why you might want to do a fire walk is if there's a place in your life you feel stuck or you want to be bumped up to the next level.
Yeah.
There's really nothing like a fire walk to open your mind to what you've been limiting, how you've been limiting yourself.
Hmm.
Because one of the first agreements we make is fire burns.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
just
And it does.
watching someone, yeah, and it does,
Yeah. And it
exactly. But just
does.
watching someone cross
Yeah.
1300-degree cold,
Yeah.
that open.
Right, right. Just tapping into something that allows you to move through it, and just like what you do, the arrow breaking with the neck, and it's like moving, trusting, moving deeper, pushing past the fears and the limitation, but also tapping into that spiritual place. I had a really experience with a fire walk. Like I've done several of them, and I my first one I did get burned, and they said, "Oh yeah, you wanted a souvenir," and it got me to this, yeah, the burn tent, if you will, with the Tony Robbins people, where someone came in and talked to us about mind over matter, and it was fascinating, and I got like extra, learning, teaching from that experience. And then I remember, so interesting actually, that I think I talked to Storm about what was happening, and he had told me about a spot under the knee that you can press, an acupressure thing. And I pressed that, and the pain went away, and it was fascinating. And it didn't come back. And I've had sunburns that lasted longer and hurt worse. So there was something really potent about that. But then the next time when I went to do a fire walk, I wasn't anywhere near the fire yet, but I could smell the fire and my feet started to burn. And they were burning, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is the power of the mind. There's so many, like you can keep yourself from getting burnt. You can make yourself feel like you're being burned. The mind is so powerful, and it's all illusion. And so finding ways to step out of the illusion into deepen into what is true. And I know that sounds super weird, but you've experienced these things too.
So true. The mind is so powerful. And what an incredible experience for you to recognize you had the power to heal yourself,
Yeah,
that your mind also had the power to bring back something that had happened long ago,
exactly, to
create it
re-traumatize
in
me.
your form. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I had to work even harder to then do the 40-foot firewalk after that because of this, but which I did, but it was so intense. I was like, oh my God, I'm not even anywhere near it, but I feel the burning. So, well, tell us about what does it mean to be a warrior goddess?
Mm, I love bringing these two qualities together. So, warrior is our focus, our clarity. It's about that 100% commitment
Hmm.
and follow through,
I like that.
courage.
Yeah.
Goddess is about opening, receptivity, play,
Mhm.
exploration, receptivity, softness.
Yeah.
And I don't see these as gendered. People often will be like, "Oh, I get it.
Mhm.
It's masculine, feminine." I'm like, "No, it's energies, and
Mhm.
let's not genderize them." And
Yeah.
that we're not also trying to get 50% warrior and 50% goddess and check it off. They're qualities that for some of us we're just more warrior oriented.
Uh-huh.
That's how we are at essence, and others of us are more goddess oriented, and that's how we are at essence.
Right.
And that we can learn to be more skillful in how we use those energies
Hmm.
and honor how we express them.
Beautiful. So one is maybe more linear and one is more flowing and playful, but we really need to have both of them. And like you said, when to use them, and not use them, but when to embody them at different points. Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, what does it mean to be in the warrior goddess way? Tell us about that.
When I wrote The Warrior Goddess Way, I was working with three qualities, which is wisdom, authenticity, and yes. And
Mm.
so WAY.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
so the
nice. That's
Goddess
cool.
Way is not fun. Yeah. It's kind of in
Yeah.
the background. Yeah. And that there's a place where when we're really walking in relationship with ourselves, I think about being in relationship with ourselves as warrior goddesses is about self-intimacy
Mhm.
and sustainability and stillness. It's learning how, and you'll see there's echoes in everything I do because it connects to wild, willing, and wise as
Yeah.
well, that we're learning how to tap into our own wisdom, find out what's authentic for us, and shed the places that we've taken on any shells or agreements or stories about who we're supposed to be. And then learning how to say yes to life fully, yes to both living and to death. So there's a couple really beautiful stories that I write about my relationship with death. One was with the death of my father and that journey and the grief that came from that. And the second was from Don Miguel, my mentor, almost dying.
Mm-hmm.
And the dynamic he and I had through that process and my own process around it, and really coming into a relationship with the angel of death, which is a big part of the Toltec teachings.
Yeah, can you talk about what is a Toltec teacher and some of the Toltec teachings?
Yeah, so the Toltec wisdom is based out of South and Central Mexico, and it was a group of people that came together to really to study perception. They considered themselves both artists and scientists, and they were incredibly skilled at learning, at working with energy. So I was working in basically a goddess tradition when
Mm-hmm.
I recognized I was missing something and I didn't know what it was. And I prayed for a teacher. And that's when I met Don Miguel Ruiz, who's the author of the Four Agreements. And his family is from that lineage of Toltec wisdom. So it's so much about untangling old energetic belief systems and getting free on the inside. And a lot of that work from the deep study with Don Miguel and his sons and my relationship with them is just woven through everything I do now.
Yeah, that's really wonderful and amazing. And yeah, for folks that don't know, hopefully you do know, and you've read the book, The Four Agreements, and The Mastery of Love, which is another wonderful book by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I remember back in the days when guys were doing lots of groups, you did a lot of stuff in the dream time. You would wake yourselves up, or what was that about? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we did a dreaming ceremony that I first did with Miguel and then brought it into our groups. And it's such a powerful ceremony. It You wake up every hour and a half or so, and
Uh-huh.
there's always somebody up by a candle. So you have an altar and a focus point. And then one group stays up and chants or sits and meditates around a candle, and the other groups go to bed. And then the
Uh-huh.
first group wakes the second group up. That group comes and sits around the fire. And so it rotates. And the there's two main purposes for it. We still do them online, which is
Uh-huh.
super fun, and live sometimes, is that you are interrupting your sleep
Mm-hmm.
and learning how to be in the in-between space. And
Mm.
what can happen is you can go straight into lucid dreaming or having really different experiences in the dream world. So it helps to break apart old stagnant things in our being. And another thing is just I love them so much because there's this sense of devotion,
Uh-huh.
of sitting with the fire and being up in the middle of the night, and connection to stillness and the dream world that can happen even when we're awake.
Sounds really incredible. And again, you've had many, many incredible experiences. You take people out for incredible experiences. To Teotihuacan, that's one of the places that you go. Can you talk about some of your work and some of the retreats that you lead?
Yeah, I have been going to Teotihuacan for 30 plus years now, and it's outside of Mexico City. I was just there. I literally arrived today from Teotihuacan.
Oh, wow, you just came back?
I just
Oh
came
my
back.
goodness.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you. And there's a pyramid complex there, and it's the heart of Toltec wisdom. And I was trained by Miguel to take people through the different levels of consciousness to connect with the wisdom that's in the pyramids and the stones there. And there's a really beautiful initiation ceremony that we do in relationship with the pyramids and with the angel of death. I also
Oh,
take
wow.
groups down for Day of the Dead
Oh,
to do
nice.
ancestral healing work, which is
Yeah,
so important and so vital.
yeah,
And
agreed.
yeah, so good. Yeah.
Hmm.
And next year I'm taking my first group to Scotland. We taken a group to Ireland a couple years ago.
Wow.
And I'm starting to do a lot more travels to Scotland. I learned that my maternal line is from Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. And so I've been going there for the last 3 years and visiting and putting my
Connecting with your
body on
ancestors.
the ancestral land.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to start bringing groups there.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds wonderful. Well, yeah, the work that you do in the world and the way that you navigate the world is, I mean, I'm sure there are costs to being gone all the time, but the traveling, the writing, the workshops, the things that you do are, it's such a wonderful path, a nomadic path, a really rich path of, you know, shepherding people to different places and looking out for them and giving them experiences that they would probably never, places they would never travel to by themselves. And both inner travels as well as outer travels, places they wouldn't go. So can you tell us about your newest book, Wild, Willing, and Wise? And it says it's a contemporary reimagining of the Maiden, Mother, and Crone archetypes.
Yes, I love this book so much. It's a workbook and it's a guide. And I wrote it as we were coming out of the pandemic and all the upheaval in the world. And I recognize we need something simple.
Yeah.
I need something simple and light that is easily graspable because, and it's still happening. So many of us have just intense decision fatigue and overwhelm and brain fog and like feeling like we can't get traction because so many things have changed. And so I went back to my roots, which was Maiden, Mother, Crone, these archetypes that are connected to the moon
Uh-huh.
that at the time I thought were very ancient archetypes. And I've learned since they're more modern, but they do have a link back to the moon cycles and that place of transformation of the waxing moon and energy building, the full moon, and then the waxing moon of energy dissipating. And so as I sat with those three qualities, I realized a couple of things. One is that I wanted to make them gender neutral
Uh-huh.
and not linear because
Great.
they're very linear, like you're young
Yes,
and
they
then
are.
you're a parent and then you're old and you die.
Uh-huh. And crone is not a sexy word. I'm so sorry. I
I
do not
love,
like the word crone.
I know, and
Yeah.
that's what my agent said that she's
Yeah.
like, Heather, please don't use that word crone. I'm like, I love the word crone, and she's like,
Yes,
nobody
some
loves the
people
word.
do. Yeah.
Some people do, yeah,
Yeah.
but a lot of
I do
people have
not like it.
resistance. Yeah, a lot of resistance. And that's where I started. I'm like, all right, if I'm gonna let go of the word crone,
Hmm.
what's the energetic behind it?
Yeah.
What's the archetype? And that's where I was like, oh, it's wisdom. It's the
Mhm.
archetype of wise.
Yeah.
And then I went to wild, and I looked at maiden,
Hmm.
and I recognized that maiden energy is our wildness. It's our animal self. So I
Hmm.
think the wild is our animal play, creativity, exploration. The wise is our stillness, our calm, our compassion, our divinity, our connection to the divine.
Yeah.
And then in the middle is our human self.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to find the right word. What is that mothering parent? And it's
Yeah.
not about babies necessarily. It might be raising a family, but it's really when you're wanting to grow anything, whether yourself on your spiritual path or raise a child or start a business.
Hmm.
And it was actually a business coach who is a mother. She's like, who's more willing than a mom?
Right.
I was like, that's it. That's the quality. And willing is our courage. It's our willingness to show up even when we don't know what it's going to look like, to be sustainable. And I think about that willing energy is nourishing our fire. And sometimes that fire needs little kindling and light blow, like just a little puff to get it going. And sometimes you need to put a big log on it and step back and be willing to surrender.
Great.
So there's this relational quality that we have with willing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because yeah, that phase of life or that role is a lot about availability, spaciousness, nurturing, just yeah, showing up, rolling up your sleeves and showing up and being present for what is who needs what.
It
Yeah,
needs
that's
what?
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I love the subtitle. The subtitle is fantastic. Can you tell us about that? When do we jump
Yes.
naked? When do we
When we
when do we paddle, rest, and jump naked into the river?
the archetype or the theme, I should say, the metaphor throughout the book is
Hmm.
about being in relationship to the river of life, and that wild, willing, and wise are our guides, and that we need
Hmm.
all of them. And sometimes on the river of life, we need to paddle, and
Hmm.
that's that willing and also knowing when to rest, which is the wise. And that sometimes we need the wild, which is jumping into the river naked and letting everything go and playing. I and working with these three qualities, like working on a being on a river, we can immediately get to know ourselves a little bit more. I think the book is so much about self-intimacy of, am I paddling upriver? Am I stuck in an eddy? Am I trying to row everybody else's boats?
Hmm.
And as we get to know ourselves, there's a lot of quizzes and different exercises throughout the book. Then we can start course correcting our little boat down the river and learning which energies do we need more of. Do we need more wild or less wild? Do we need more willing or less willing? Sometimes we need to turn up the wise, and sometimes we actually need to turn it down.
Makes sense. Yeah. So I like, again, it's the way that you've imagined these archetypes from a place of not being linear, not being gendered per se. And so you may need throughout your day, it could be one thing, or throughout a particular phase in your life, you might need a little more of this, or a little less of this. Um, and so you're not, just because you're at a particular uh, developmental stage or age in your life, it doesn't mean that you're just in the wise area. You, like you said, you might need to bring a little more wild energy into your older age, or you might need to bring a little more wisdom into your youth, or whatever it is. Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's getting us out of linear thinking.
Uh-huh.
It's such a Western way of, if I just do A and B and C, then D will be the result. If I just do it right, then I will manifest whatever I want. And there's this place where I believe we harm ourselves by holding ourselves to these linear perfection. And
Uh-huh.
the world is like, the world should be linear. The world is not linear. Like, it's
No.
complicated. It's right all over the place. And learning to be in relationship with that river where it's at and come back into the circle, that everything changes. And I like to think about wild, willing, and wise. These energies are colors. One way to look at them is that they're different colors in the palette of our life,
Uh-huh.
and that we can choose as artists. And that's what Toltec means. It means artist of the spirit.
Oh.
That we can pull, like, oh, I need a little bit more of the color of wild. Let me bring that color up in my life. Let me turn this one down. And so we're then in this dynamic circular or spiral dance with life, much more balanced and skillful. And that it's not about age or experience, it's about what's needed. And I know plenty of young ones that are incredibly wise,
Mhm.
and lots of people that are in their, later years that are not wise. So we get to be wild in whatever age we're at. We need that energy. It's a very vital, juicy energy that we all need. Most of us need more of, honestly,
Yeah, more wild
and
energy. Uh-huh.
more wild for sure.
Yeah.
And then to find that
Okay.
balance of our willing. So we're not over willing and caretaking and trying to
Right.
everybody else, but that we're balanced and sustainable in
Yeah,
our willing.
that's probably the one of the biggest ones, especially for many creatives, many women, is to over caretake for other people, to be too willing, and to not know when we need to say no, and saying yes, or begrudgingly saying yes too often for too many things. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's
can you
balance.
talk about the what is the inner fire and how to awaken it?
Mm. I believe that each of us has this fire inside of us that is our soul, our life force, our divinity, and that often we dampen it by thinking about who we're supposed to be rather than discovering who we are at our core. And one of the the teachings in the Toltec work is that we're each a unique ray of light, and we're here to shine our light in the world. And so how do we tend that light? As a firewalker and firewalk instructor, I have a deep relationship with fire and knowing what the fire needs, and it needs things at different times. And our being is the same way, that we can dampen our own fire, where we're putting our own fire out, we're doubting ourselves, we're comparing ourselves all the time, we're making ourselves wrong, and that's dampening that beautiful fire. Or we can be tossing gasoline on our fire and like constantly be in drama and trying to fix everybody else's drama and overly worrying about things so that we burn out, that we're using too much energy and that it's not sustainable. And we can then also learn how to be in relationship with our inner fire, where we're listening. And this really harkens back to Don Miguel's 4 agreements of don't make assumptions, do your best. It's all of them, but if I just pull those 2,
Yeah.
when we learn to do our best, we're at 100% with our fire. We're keeping it, we're in relationship with it. So doing your best doesn't mean you're at the exact same level all the time.
Okay.
It means you're listening to what capacity you have. And so
And you're not trying to be perfect either.
You're not trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if my fire's low because I've been sick or because I've been traveling or because I'm scattered in some reason, I'm gonna not like hold myself to this really high standard. I used to do that and it doesn't go well over time, right? I used to be sick almost all the time. And I just thought, oh, it's just part of being a teacher. You're just sick all the time. And I had to really learn how to adjust my energy and not blow out so much energy when I was teaching, to learn how to hold my fire and let it be bright and feed and nourish me. And what I learned, which was so surprising, is that actually when I used less energy, it was more powerful. The teachings were more powerful. There was more transformation that happened because I was being more skillful in how I was using my fire.
You were more aware, or just more contained in your energy.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to do too much, trying to give too much, just being more saturated, more present.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a way that we can create more potency with our inner fire.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
When we really, and I talk about this in Wild, Willing, and Wise, that there's something about wisdom that I think about. Wild is the spark, willing is learning to tend the fire, and wise is the coal. And if you think about a coal, when you dampen down a fire, if you have a wood stove, it allows the coals to burn really hot longer.
Yeah. Right.
And there's a way that when we learn how to coal our wisdom and what we've learned and we've digested it, our energy starts radiating out and people feel it. There's a frequency and a vibration, and we get to just show up more in that connection to the divine, listening to what's needed here. So there's much less effort. And in a way, it's that same place of learning to be skillful as you're going through a rapid. Instead of paddling the whole way, there's this wait, paddle hard left, stop, okay, a little to the right. And that we're constantly adjusting in relationship with life.
And being in your workshop and your book release back in September, I think it was, over at Renaissance in Portland, you just did a marvelous job of being that energy that you just described. You have a completely full room of people, and you, again, just master teacher. Your energy was very coal-like and showed up where it needed to go. But you weren't overperforming. You weren't. I mean, it's interesting to watch different speakers and spiritual teachers and who does what. And some folks are really focused on their presentation, uh, their clothing, whatever it is. And there's just this real earnest, authentic depth to you. And you were so present with, I don't know, it was like 60 people in the room at least. And everyone could feel your energy. It was just phenomenal. There was a lot of intimacy and sharing from the crowd, participation. And so that what you're talking about, I mean, I witnessed you doing that. And I think, again, having seen so many different speakers and this and that, I mean, I can think about like Doreen, I'll just say that person's name, the Angels, who
Yes.
does who has recanted all of her teachings.
Yes.
Watching her at an event where she was like performing like Cher on the stage, and it was a lot of spectacle. It's very interesting to see differences in spiritual teachers and what burns out and what continues to be a nice, powerful, slow burn, you know. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really grateful to have made as many mistakes as I've made in my life and learned from them,
That's
and
hopeful.
really still continuing to learn how to deepen and show up. And I love it. The tour was so fun to get to do the same talk, but be in relationship with each different group and learn.
Yeah.
Like, I learned something every talk that I did about the book. And I think I did 25 cities on
Wow.
that tour.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's
I mean,
delightful.
that's a lot. That's a lot of being with people. And that's a lot of giving. So, knowing how to do that in a way that is sustaining for you and then you're still connecting in such a deep way with people is really, it's a gift to everyone that's involved. I just want to tell folks your website, you have a couple of them, warriorgoddess.com and wildwillingwise.com. Those are two places that you can go to learn more about HeatherAsh Amara's work and her books. And I'm going to put some links. I'm going to put the links to the website in the chat below or the comments below, whatever we call this. And I will also put a couple of links to directly so you can go and buy the books, at least two of them in there. And then you can also look on HeatherAsh Amara's author central page on Amazon as well and read all about the 9 different books, or also on your website, warriorgoddess.com. Are there any, and again, I know I wanted to have this like informal conversation with you to really talk about your work. And I'm fanboying, fangirling out here a little bit because I really, do admire you. And I sincerely say that from a place of like I don't give that away to just everybody, but like there's something so authentic, and you walk your talk. You're not trying to be somebody you're not. You've been doing this work steadily since the 90s. Again, you're not somebody that just like ran on the scene and wrote a book like everybody else's book. This is like you come by this honestly. Again, I did read on your website about your oneness experience when you were 7, which is so beautiful. I love that on your website, instead of having a bio, you have your journey and how you got to be who you are and where life has taken you. So again, a huge fan of who you are and who you be in the world. But are there any questions that I haven't asked you today, Heather Ash, that you would like to share, or any comments about your work?
Thank you, Davina. One thing, since we've shared so much about the Firewalk, which I love, and tending the inner fire, is one more lesson that I learned a couple years ago, which was a really big one. I steward 180 acres of land in New Mexico outside of Santa Fe, and we had a wildfire
Oh,
that went through 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and it was devastating. It's the biggest wildfire in New Mexico. Really, really devastated our community, and we lost 175 acres of our forest.
oh my goodness. I'm so
180. So
sorry.
we have, yeah, it was, and two big things came out of that. Many things came out of that, but one of the things that came out of it was people would say to me, "You have such a deep relationship with the fire. Aren't you upset or mad with the fire that it destroyed what you love?" And I was like,
Mhm.
no, it did a really good job. Like, it's doing fire things, like
Yeah.
high five fire. And that the elements, I believe the elements in life is neutral. That it's not, the fire was not out to hurt me personally or destroy the land. It was just consuming and eating.
Mhm.
And there's a lot then of restoration that we're working on since then. And my life shifted pretty drastically from a 5-year plan of a wilderness retreat center and bringing people online to now I have a 50-year plan of how do we restore the land for the bees and for the bears and
Mm.
make sure that there's sustainability happening. So it's been really beautiful and really devastating at the same time. And as we go through life, it's not that if you live your life right, nothing bad will happen.
Mhm.
When we live our life fully, when things happen, we learn how to metabolize them and to listen and grieve and open and be in relationship with. So that invitation for all of us and that ongoing unfoldment of it's challenging, and we're probably going to have some challenging years coming up. And so we need to stay
Yeah.
grounded, we need to stay connected to each other,
Mhm.
and be in community in a way where we hold each other up and hold hands when there's fires that are burning and
Mhm.
tend to each other. Yeah.
That's really powerful. And again, another example of your willingness and your ability to pivot, right? You had a whole vision. And now, again, something's changing. So you're pivoting here. Um, and I love how, yeah, I mean, I get it that you might be upset that that there was a fire, but not upset at fire because, like you said, it's a neutral element doing what it does. And fire is also cleansing. So whatever cleansing needed to happen. But I really appreciate your saying that you have a new commitment and you have a longer plan. Again, it's not this like urgent, immediate thing. Like this is again my experience of you is that you're not uh like let's hurry up and do it. You're like, okay, what's the vision? What's the longer vision? Not how do I get how do I get rich quick? Like which again, a lot of people out there are, that's their message. And yours is you're thinking about sustainability, you're thinking about bringing people together in a new way. Yeah. So you did mention that, and this will be, we'll wrap up after this, but you did mention that, we will be facing some hard things ahead, and you mentioned coming back to connection. Do you have any other final words on the importance of connection and how to get through the hard times that we will be facing?
Yeah. One of the biggest just heart openings I had around that. I was blessed to interview great grandmother Mary Lyons, who's a Ojibwe elder. And I said to her, how do you do it? How do you do it as an Indigenous woman where your people have been so repressed and killed and your your wisdom not honored? Like, how do you do it? And she said, oh, sweetheart.
Mhm.
She said, we have to keep being in our joy and loving and looking and dancing, and that there's a place that when times are hard that we hold to the beauty of life and we keep going, and that's what keeps us sustainable. And so, knowing that there's challenges ahead, I always go back to, okay, people have navigated really big challenges forever.
Yeah.
And so how do we stay loving with each other and continue to have fun and have joy and laugh and celebrate each other, because that's part of what we need to stay sustainable. It's not I'm gonna, we have to like go into fight battle and we're gonna fight for, like, yeah, I do think we need to fight and we need to march and we need to be activists and we need to show up,
Mhm.
but that has to be balanced with loving our lives and doing playful, joyful, silly, magical things and remembering the beauty that's always around us.
Wonderful. So staying in joy, jumping naked into the river,
Naked into
playing,
the river.
uh-huh, connecting. Beautiful, beautiful. That's a
Yeah,
great
I
way
know
to
there's
end
going
it.
to be some rapids. Like there's going to be
Yeah.
rapids ahead. Let's
Yeah.
get ready. let's get ready
And
to.
rapids can sometimes be fun too if you like rafting.
Exactly,
That's the
exactly.
thrill.
That
Uh-huh.
is the thrill. Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it, Heather Ash, and thanks to Serena for setting this up. And happy birthday to her today.
Yes, happy birthday.
Um,
Yeah.
and again, welcome back, and thank you for all that you do. And if you want to learn more about Heather Ash, go to her website, warriorgoddess.com, and check out her new book at wildwillingwise.com. Thanks again. Peace and blessings.
Davina. Mwah.